Fox Sisters came to New York. Horace Greeley was their first caller. After witnessing these manifestations produced through their mediumship, he was convinced the phenomenon was genuine. He printed an announcement of their appearances and so became their sponsor during their stay in New York. He opened the columns of his paper to all who wished to express themselves regarding spirit communication. Because of this, he was named the Abraham Lincoln of modern spiritualism. Other religious movements besides spiritualism were spreading across New York State to the mid to late 1800s. The influence of these movements was so heavy in western New York region that the name Burned Over District was coined to show how there was no more people to convert, or there was no more fuel to burn. The spiritualist movement was no exception to the Burned Over District and began to spread like wildfire. Before long, the Fox Sisters drew much attention to their rappings and began to charge admission. Many scientists, however, were out to disprove the Fox Sisters, and they were subject to the harshest of scientific scrutiny. Committees were formed, and many citizens looked forward to labeling the Fox Sisters as fraudulent. The Fox Sisters in one study were asked to remove their clothes, put on different clothes, go into an isolated room, and then produce the rappings. No raps occurred, though. However, later that evening, in the same room, when the committee and Fox Sisters were eating at the dinner table levitated gradually in the air, and then came back to the ground. Aside from rappings such as these, many seances, spiritualism-related speeches, and psychic readings were occurring throughout the New York State region, the nation, and the world.
But if you listen to this, it has a conch shell sound to it. Now when you have your seance, spirit, we say speak softly. Some of our shirts have that on our shirts. It's a logo. But this trumpet will actually float in the air. There's pictures of this actually being done. And this trumpet will float around the room to various people, and that person could hear a message from that.
However, spiritualism, along with many other things, were brought to a halt with the dawn of the American Civil War. The spiritualist movement was already popular enough to maintain itself throughout the war. Ron Nagy, a Lilydale archivist, tells of Abraham Lincoln's involvement in the spiritualist movement.
Abraham Lincoln was a spiritualist. That was one of the few presidents, if not the only president, that did not, if you look in the, was not registered in any one religion. But they lost 3 out of 4 sons during his presidency through childhood diseases. But I have it in 2 books. I have a book dated 1871 where he ordered a seance in the White House. This was during the Civil War. He had the entire cabinet present, plus his wife. The medium's name was Shockley, and they told him exactly what this one battleship was doing, the Southern battleship was doing over in England. And the message was, the ship's going to sink. Don't worry about it. But after the seance was over, Lincoln says, well, that's very good. He said, but don't build one less battleship.
When the Civil War ended, many soldiers on both sides were dead. The families were distraught and sought out spiritualists to communicate with their dead loved ones. This brought on a revival of spiritualism. Not long after the Civil War came the formation of the Cassadaga Lake Free Association in 1879. This association is now, in 2008, known as Lilydale.
There were many Christian denominations building churches in western New York during the early 19th century. Baptist and Methodist were predominant. Ron Nagy said that the closest Christian denomination to the religion of spiritualism was the Universalist, which came in the area around the 1950s.
A lot of our members way back when were, we call them Unitarian today. That's the closest religion to spiritualism so far is the Unitarians, or the Unity Church.
In the winter of 1844 and 45, Dr. Moran, a specialist of mesmerism who studied with Anton Mesmer, was from Vermont and invited to lecture by Mr. Johnson to the people of Leona, located not far from Cassadaga. William Johnson, Jeremiah F. Carter, and L.A. Ramsdell are the first known mesmerism subjects turned mediums. At the time Jeremiah Carter, physically enfeebled, had sought to be treated by Dr. Moran. Unfortunately, Dr. Moran had to leave before such could be applied. Mr. Johnson suggested that they themselves try the experiments, demonstrated by the Vermont doctor. The results were startling. Mr. Carter became entranced. The advent of the Hydesville manifestations with the Fox sisters strengthened the purpose of the group in Leona, and they termed themselves spiritualists and liberals. The group met regularly to discuss their beliefs and practice their healing and mediumship. Many great speakers and medium had their early beginnings in Leona. In 1855, the first Spiritualist Society of Leona was formed. In 1871, Willard Alden owned a good-sized farm just outside the gates of Lilydale. There was a train station that was built at the time and was called Lilydale by the Aldens.
There were two classes of people. The people that actually came here with money, they leased a lot, they built a house. That was a big thing back then, to be able to do that, plus still own a house in a city. So you had two houses. Even today, if somebody owns a house in Lilydale and owns a house in Buffalo or Rochester, they're a little bit better off than the average person, because they have two houses. And then the other kind of people that came to Lilydale was just trainloads of people. Trainloads of people, like in these two pictures here. There would be hundreds and hundreds of people getting off the train at the same time, walking over the bridge to come to Lilydale. And they were coming here for the mediums, for the seances, for the speakers, which we had some of the most prominent speakers of the day at that time.
They called the train station Lilydale because there was lilies in the lake and the area was in a dale. This is where the name Lilydale originated, though it was not coined as the name for the Spiritualist Society there until later. It was at Alden's Grove on the shore of Cassadaga Lake that the Spiritualists commenced holding picnics around 1871, the now Leolin Woods just outside the gates. At first, these gatherings were mainly for recreation and enjoyment, and anyone was invited to attend. But Mr. Alden could not forget spiritualism or his interest in it. A wooden bridge was needed to cross the lake. This bridge was later rebuilt as a steel bridge, similar to the one of today. Though the train station no longer exists, the bridge is still in use, bringing many new tourists to Lilydale as it once did in 1871. Jeremiah Carter began hearing spirit voices, and he began camp meetings that were first held on September 11th in 1877. This became known as the Leona Free Association. An early speaker was Andrew Jackson Davis. Picnics were also held and cost a dime. In 1875, there was a minor money crash or depression that spread throughout the region surrounding Lilydale. Thomas Skidmore, a wealthy local that was soon to be treasurer of the National Spiritualist Association, was the town bank president, and therefore the crash didn't affect Lilydale.
There was depressions. I'm talking about the 1875 money crash, the 1880s something depression in the United States. We never flinched. We never batted an eye here.